All right, we're going live now.
My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. I'm joined by Dr. Teresa Lily White, Dr. Lenore Walker, Mr. Ed Denzel. Investigation with Dr. T is something that actually was the brainchild of our dean, Dr. Durham. And now, coming up this next season, we're going to be doing it almost weekly, a weekly show on a Thursday night. So lots of really cool guests. It's not just police topics, it's not just corrections topics, but it's topics that are affecting us in kind of all areas. But one of the things that we hope to get across is raising awareness, educating about some of these really important topics like human trafficking, topics like disasters. We did a show, Confessions of a Serial Killer. So for this upcoming season, we've got a couple of really cool things. We're going to have a day in the life of a DEA agent. Another really cool one, which is really close to my heart, is going to be on September 11th. Because not only do we want to talk about 9/11 and the work of the NYPD, but I also want to really look at the mental health outcomes. We also have the human trafficking panel. We are going to bring back our Brevard Sheriff, Sheriff Wayne Ivey. It's always a pleasure to have him on. We're going to have Unfound again. Ed Denzel, he'll be coming back a few times, and that's going to be really exciting and interesting too. Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Telesco, and this is Investigation with Dr. T. And I'm so excited about tonight's show because we have with us the Honorable Judge Ari Abraham Porth, and he is currently a mental health court judge, but he has practiced and served in the drug court. I'm going to share my screen right here so you can see who he is, and I'm going to just do a little read of his bio. And I'm not going to read the whole bio because it is a lot. It is a lot. But I'm going to just kind of briefly give you a summary of the greatness of this man. So after graduating from Northeastern University in Boston, Judge Porth served as a legislative aide to the United States Senator Bob Graham in Washington, D.C., where he corresponded with constituents and researched issues involving Veterans Affairs and drugs on behalf of the senator. Then the judge moved home to South Florida to attend Nova Southeastern University Law School. Another alum, another shark in the house. I mean, if our viewers don't get by now that this school, that Nova Southeastern University, provides this amazing education, and then folks go out in the field and do great things. I don't know, but I know I'm convinced. The judge served as an assistant state attorney for Broward County from 1995 to 2012. From November of 2004 to November of 2012, he served the residents of Coral Springs, Tamarack, Lauderhill, Sunrise, North Lauderdale as their state representative. Most notably, the judge sponsored and passed the Window of Opportunity Act, mandating autism therapies be covered by certain health insurers, and divested Florida's pension system from investments in Iran and Sudan through the Protecting Florida's Investments Act. Additionally, the judge sponsored and passed legislation that protected victims of domestic violence by allowing employee leave of absence, limited liability to restaurants that donate food to shelters, created stricter background screenings for those that care for our most vulnerable, established a program within the Department of Juvenile Justice to help youth transition to success in adulthood, and created the state's first public college prep boarding school for at-risk youth, now known as Miami Seed School. I'm going to stop there. There's so much more to say about this man. I wish that he was running for president because I'd vote for him in a heartbeat. So please, everybody, help me welcome the Honorable Judge Ari Abraham Porth. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
warm welcome. And I definitely don't want to be president. I could not be happier with where I am right now.
Yeah, I bet. But we first met. I took my introduction to criminal justice students, freshmen, mostly freshmen, some sophomore, on a tour of the court, and your courtroom was one of them. And one of the things that I have to say just totally blew me away was how you just immediately asked for the students to come and sit at the desk with you, at the bench. And I just thought that that was so incredible, and how interested you were in them, and how interested you were in inspiring and encouraging them and mentoring them. And I mean, you just know. I mean, I was a lieutenant NYPD 20 years, so I know. I come from New York. I know when somebody is, full of baloney, right? You're the real deal. And I am so grateful that we got to meet you, that you said yes to come on the show. And I hope that we have collaboration in the future, if that's
It's
okay.
very kind of you. And the bench, it fits like 5 or 6 chairs, and I make full use of it. And anytime I have an opportunity to have students sit with me, I make sure that I give them that opportunity. You see it from a different perspective when you're sitting on the bench. You hear both sides. You see everything that's going on in the courtroom. It's a whole different experience when you're seeing it from the bench.
Yeah. And I know that before the show started, we were talking a little bit about your days involved with drug court. So now you're just strictly mental health court, right?
Right. I'm just doing our felony mental health court docket, but there is a lot of overlap in mental health court. A lot of the clients, and we call them clients in the treatment courts. I don't refer to them as defendants. They're clients of our court. There's a lot of overlap. A lot of the clients of mental health court also have substance use issues.
Wow. So I just the term client versus defendant tells you the philosophy right up front. It's talking about helping others to reenter successfully, no matter what the burden or challenges that they're going through, whether it be addiction or whether it be mental illness. And so reentering successfully, well, that's something that we should want for everyone involved in the criminal justice system, is for them to reenter successfully. And of course, we have an eye on recidivism, but when you put the emphasis on reentering successfully, you're putting a positive light on it, right? Would you agree?
100%. It's very unusual when you come into courtroom 7810 at the Broward County Courthouse, because you have this team of people working collaboratively. You have the mostly public defenders, because they represent probably 95% of the clients in our courtroom. Most of the people that are there are indigent. You have the state attorneys. You have a probation officer, our clerk, our judicial assistant, case managers. Everybody is working in a team approach for the benefit of that client, to make sure he or she gets to where they need to be. And very often in our courtroom, the person is charged with a serious offense, and we certainly have to balance the community's safety when we're thinking about placing them into the community. But we look at the full picture. We make sure that we are setting them up for success, that they are medication compliant, that they have the services that they need to be successful in the community.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the process. So, how do I come to mental health court? What is it, a Baker Act? Is what, like, can you walk us through the process?
Sure. There's a few different doors to get to mental health court. There is a misdemeanor mental health court that's run by Judge Ginger Lerner Wren. To get to felony mental health court, you are arrested and charged with a felony offense, and you end up in one of the other felony trial divisions. And there, the judge or one of the attorneys, it could be the state attorney, it could be the defense attorney, somebody is going to suggest, after seeing the client in court or speaking with the client, that there might be some competency concerns. And usually, after an evaluation, the case is sent over to my division. So either an evaluation has been done or there's a request for an evaluation. There's some indication that the person's not competent to proceed. So one of the ways you get to my division is being not competent to proceed. The case comes over. Another way you get to felony mental health court is if you are competent to proceed, but want to resolve your case because you have ongoing mental health issues, you can come over to felony mental health court with your case wanting to resolve, and we can handle your disposition and have you on mental health probation and monitor your case going forward. Unlike other felony divisions, we have regular status hearings to make sure that the person on mental health probation is compliant with the conditions of probation, to make sure that they are set up with all of their needs, to make sure that they're taking their medication, going to their appointments. So we do a lot more hand holding. We come back to court much more frequently than somebody on probation in another division. That's the second way you get to our court. We also have a 18-month-old that I'm very proud of, new felony mental health court diversion program. It's modeled after drug court, where you are competent to proceed. You have ongoing mental health issues. You have a mental health diagnosis. But if you participate, like the drug court model, in a year of treatment that we'll set up for you, we'll get you case managers, we'll set you up with a treatment provider. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in Broward, because we have clients of this diversion program treating all over the United States and all over Florida. If you do a year of treatment, your case will be dismissed. And you can have a couple prior offenses and still participate in that diversion program. So we've got that docket on Tuesdays that we're doing. So there are a few doors that will get you into felony mental health court.
Okay. Where does the Baker Act lie in the scheme of things?
So oftentimes, if somebody comes into our courtroom and we see that they are having a psychotic episode, or we have an indication from a family member that might be in court with them that they are perhaps acting strangely or might not be safe to themselves or others, we, on occasion, from the courtroom, or if the person's not in court, if they're held up in their room at home, not opening the door, we're very concerned for them, but they're a client of our court, we will get involved and call the mobile crisis unit at Henderson, these social workers that will go to the house or come to the courtroom and do an assessment on the spot to see if they meet the criteria to go to a receiving facility where they can be assessed by a doctor and taken into the hospital and can remain at the hospital until they're stabilized. So that's the little piece of the Baker Act that we deal with in our courtroom.
Yeah. So where is the police in all of this? So when the police officer responds to a call of someone, running in the street, let's say without clothes on, and is when they approach the individual says, the Martians are here and they're coming for me. So it's apparent mental illness, right? It's apparent psychosis. And if the officer in his or her discernment feel that this is a Baker Act situation, then they will Baker Act them and they'll bring them to probably Broward General or possibly Fort Lauderdale Hospital. Am I correct? Or it could be
You're
any
correct.
hospital. Oh, okay.
Not any hospital. And
No.
unfortunately, we've lost at least two Baker Act facilities in the last 6 months in Broward. I think Florida Medical Center and University Pavilion, they were Baker Act facilities that have closed their services. We've lost a lot of Baker Act beds, but you're probably right. Broward General, I think Imperial Point, depends where in the county, maybe Hollywood Memorial, Fort Lauderdale Hospital. But the situation that you're talking about, somebody running without clothes on, not necessarily committing a crime, just having a mental health episode. If the officer is properly trained, and many of them have been and have received something called crisis intervention training, then they're very likely going to handle it um, in a mental health appropriate way, and they're going to take them to a receiving facility, or they can take them to a facility that's run by Henderson on 441 in Lauderdale Lakes called the Centralized Receiving Center. It's a 23-hour center that's presently underused. We really need to promote it better. That might be a good topic for a future show. Have somebody from Henderson on to promote that facility. So it's open 23
So
hours.
can
It's
you hook that up
permanently.
for us? Can
Sure,
you can you
100%,
hook that up for? Okay,
100%.
great. Awesome.
Absolutely,
Next season.
absolutely.
All right, we'll get
Okay,
in touch.
okay.
We'll be in touch
So
about it.
Henderson's got this 23-hour intake center. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for all of your needs. It doesn't rise to the level of a Baker Act, but I think they've got showers there. They've got a place to de-escalate. They might have some clothes for you. They can get you set up with medication, and you can just chill. And they're not going to admit you, but it's a place to settle down and get linked to services. It's the centralized receiving center at Henderson. But a lot of officers have gone through a 40-hour training. In Broward, it is coordinated through Aisha McDonald at the United Way, and she's delightful and wonderful, and I have nothing but praises for her and that agency. And the officers learn how to um, handle people that are having a mental health episode or somebody that might be on the autism spectrum more appropriately. And instead of arresting the person and charging the person and filling up the jails, handle it on the mental health route.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure that there's a lot of overlap that officers see in the field, right? So is it is it addiction? Is it substance abuse? Is it mental illness? Is it both? A lot of times we see, probably you see a lot of these clients that are, have co-occurring disorders.
It could be addiction. It could be a mental health issue. It could be a mental health issue and not being medication compliant. They could have just stopped taking their medication. That's unfortunately so many of the cases that I see in court are people that stopped taking their medication. Like
Right.
I hear from their family members, when he's consistent on his medication, he's a completely different person. You see
Yes.
him one day and he's like the sweetest guy ever. And then you see him on another day and he's running around the kitchen naked and holding a knife.
Right.
So you see a completely different person from one day this week to one day the next week.
Right. And the families really, really suffer the burden because they love their family member. They want their family member to get help. Getting somebody to stay medication compliant is not easy. And on top of all of that, if there's a danger and they've hurt someone, then there's the fear that that's going to happen again. And so what we find out is that families sometimes just get worn down. Do you see that happening where there was a support from the family, but it's this kind of the chronic mental illness and the chronic episodes that make the family kind of say, look, I can't take this anymore. Tough love, you can't stay here anymore. Do you see that?
Unfortunately, so many of the people in my courtroom um, appear for their court hearings and don't have any family with them in court because I think it has gotten to the point where their family is just so exhausted. But then there are cases where the family sticks by them through thick and thin. Your point, though, with medication, I hear often from clients of our court that they don't want to take certain medication because of the side effects. It makes them drowsy. It causes weight gain or dizziness. I mean, there are a number of things that they rattle off, and I talk about. Have you discussed that with a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner? Can we try to get you on an alternative? I have found that the best solution to medication compliance is a long-acting injectable so that you don't have to remind the person every day to be taking
Mm,
the medication, but it's some of those shots last even longer than a month. There are shots that are really long acting, and then you have to be constantly reminding them to take their medication. And that's really been a blessing. If they agree to take that injection, that has been um, really something that has been successful for a lot of clients.
what resources are really available for folks who suffer with mental illness, chronic mental illness? Any resources for them specifically? Uh, like you said earlier, if a client is willing to go for treatment for the year, that everything is provided for them. Is that a free service? I mean, do we have community mental health?
So in our court, for people that have criminal charges pending, the services that they receive are free. We work with what we call the managing entity, which is like privatized behavioral health in each of the circuits. And in Broward, it's called the Broward Behavioral Health Coalition,
Hmm.
and they're in charge of which agencies receive funding. So they have the pot of money and they contract with the Hendersons and the Archways and take the money and make sure that people have a place to stay at certain FAR certified sober homes and make sure that people have the treatment services that they need. So through the Broward Behavioral Health Coalition, we are able to link the clients of our court with residential services if that's what they need, with treatment, with peer support, which is a huge benefit. I don't know if you've talked about peer specialists in your class, but we have made great use of peer specialists, which is somebody that has a lived experience, somebody that has a substance use issue or mental health issue, possibly has gone through the criminal justice system themselves, so they can actually speak to what the client in court is going through because they've been through it themselves and can help navigate that client in court through all of the rough waters that person is now going through as a peer, but they have a state certification. They're called peer specialists, and there's a couple agencies that do it. One that does it really well, called South Florida Wellness Network, and the peers that work there are angels. I love them all. They come to
Mm-hmm.
court. They go to appointments with the clients. So we set them up for success with all of their needs.
And that's for the year that they have agreed to treatment, correct?
Well, when I mentioned the year of treatment was for the clients in our diversion program. Clients that aren't in our diversion program, clients that are not competent to proceed, or clients that are on probation are usually with us for a lot longer than a year.
Okay. All right. Because what I'm wondering about is while we have like intensive treatment happening and all the resources are in place, um, there's more likely to be success. But then what happens when that runs out, or what happens when it's okay, now we're, take the training wheels off and now, you're on your own kind of thing. What do you see in terms of success
Uh,
there?
I mean, I can give you the very recent experience of today. I'm only going to mention his first name, but he's been with us for about 3 years. His name is Gustavo, and he's finally in a place where he's doing very well. And there have been so many bumps along the road, but he's in a residential program in Miami, a dual diagnosis treatment program. There have been points in Gustavo's life, and all he has, I'm not going to say all because it's still, I mean, it's a serious offense. He has like a resisting with violence, but in the scheme of things, it's not your most serious offense. He has a resisting with violence. He doesn't have many priors. He's got a very engaged family, super supportive mom and sister that are always on the Zoom when he has court. But he's been to a bunch of different programs, and every time I send him home, there's like some sort of relapse. There might be use, or he cuts off his ankle monitor, or something happens. So he's finally in a really good place, and his case was dismissed today. There was a request to dismiss his criminal charge by his defense attorney, and the state attorney did not object. But before I dismissed his case, I had a long conversation with Gustavo and with his sister Lindsay and with his mother Gloria. And I said, listen, when I dismiss Gustavo's case today, he's not going to have these court appearances anymore. And I'm not going to have any oversight. And I'm not going to be able to check in to make sure that he's taking his meds. And he's not going to have to stay at the program that he's at right now. And he's not going to have the ankle monitor on anymore. He's going to be doing this all on his own. Are we at that point now? Are we going to
Mm,
be able to, as you said, take the training wheels off? And his sister said, Judge Porth, I think we've got this. And so at some point, I just have to be like, we've done all we can. We've given him the tools. He's got to do it on his own and hope for the
yes.
best.
Yes, yes. And I think that where sometimes, and I'm so glad you mentioned crisis intervention training for police officers, because, it's so easy for a mental health practitioner to do a quick assessment, a quick and dirty assessment. Okay, this person's borderline, this person's, antisocial, this person, is schizophrenic, bipolar, whatever. But a police officer who maybe has an associate's degree, maybe, right? Who, okay, went through the crisis intervention training, but now has to apply all of these skills on the street and make these quick decisions as to whether or not this should be a Baker Act or this should be an arrest. And what do you see in the field? What do you see happening? And I hope it's good news, because we don't want to disparage any of our amazing law enforcement officers, but sometimes we expect a little bit too much of our police officers, and I think that was like the big criticism a few years ago with, hey, listen, police officers shouldn't be doing this kind of work. They should be doing like real, crime fighting, not being social workers kind of thing. What's your take on all of this?
We do expect an awful lot from our officers, and I appreciate everything that they do. Uh, they handle an awful lot. But I am optimistic because I know, at least for the Broward Sheriff's Office and a number of our municipal agencies in Broward, they have uh, required new recruits to participate in crisis intervention training. And many of their longtime officers have participated in this 40-hour a week, 40-hour course. So I think more and more officers are going through the training. I've spoken at a few of the trainings, and I think it's just going to become more and more routine. We're going to see more and more officers go through this training that is something that should be a requirement in the academy.
Yeah, absolutely. But the Memphis model, because this is what it comes from, right?
Yeah.
So the true Memphis model is not just the training aspect, it's the model. And do we have that in Broward?
Do we follow the Memphis model in Broward
Like do we have police officers going out
with a
with mental
social
health
worker?
with a mental health practitioner,
I
and
don't
like teaming up,
I don't think we're there yet.
right?
I I think that that's a beautiful idea if we
Mm-hmm.
had the resources.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Right. I mean, and I don't know if there's any, I come from the big police department, NYPD, and we didn't have that either. So, and we had, if you want to think about like resources, like, so we had the resources because we had a very, very, very big budget. But yet, at the end of the day, no, it was a police officer who was making the decision to, and we don't call it Baker Act in New York, call it something different. But the model itself, many students and some civilians really don't understand. They think that if you have CIT training, that is the same as having the model. The model is really effective. In Memphis, they were able to do it and have it work, smaller scale. Um, but we're not necessarily there yet, and I'm glad you're saying that we're not there yet. So what's happening then is a police officer kind of catches this case and makes a decision: is it mental health or is it criminal? Uh, and then really those people only maybe have to stay three days at most in the Fort Lauderdale Hospital or Broward General. Am I right? Like they'll
Mhm.
they they'll be released, and then there's no follow up for them.
Probably not.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what makes your court so fascinating and successful, I think, because it's folks are coming to you and you're able to see it holistically and help them holistically. Would you
I hope
agree?
I hope that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
When we have a case come into our division, they're with us for a while, and we pay them a lot of attention and make sure they have the services that they need.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears just for a second to drug court. Back in the day, what did you say? It was about 3 years ago?
Right, right.
Yeah.
There have been a few other people that have been involved with it since I was there. Tarlika Navarro took it over, and now she is the dean of St. Thomas Law School. Susan Alspector had it for a little while, and now she's in domestic violence court. And my dear friend Michael Davis is in charge of drug court now.
So when you were there, can you explain to our students and some civilians who might be watching what is drug court and how do you get there? And is it successful in your opinion, in your view?
It's a treatment program that allows you after about 18 months going to these um, group sessions, dropping regularly, coming to court, sharing your story with a lot of people that are in the same boat as you, um, getting your case dismissed. It's a real blessing. Getting your felony charges dismissed because you participated in this treatment program. And 100%, it's one of the best programs in Florida. I can't say enough good things about it. One of the um, inspirations for me wanting to go down this path of um, treatment courts for my career, I had I've had a mentor and role model for many years that was a drug court judge. Her name is Melanie May. She sits on the Fourth District Court of Appeals, and she is a big Nova Law supporter. I think she's actually on the big schools board of trustees. And Judge May was an early supporter of drug court, and when I was in the legislature, we worked on drug court issues together when she was a drug court judge. She's just delightful and an inspiration and still supportive of drug court, but it saves a lot of lives.
Yeah.
It keeps a lot of people alive and keeps them full of hope. And I have nothing but good things to say about drug court.
Is it usually just possession charges?
Not necessarily. If you have a nonviolent offense that is somehow related to your drug use, you might be able to get your case in that division as well.
Mm-hmm. And you also working like kind of collaborate in conjunction with Bark and some of the other treatment, maybe stepping stones.
So the treatment providers, so the Broward Sheriff's Office has its own treatment provider. There are BSO has their treatment. Then Broward Addiction Recovery Center, that's another treatment provider. Some of the participants in drug court go to Chrysalis. Some go to a provider called South Florida Therapeutics. Some go to Fifth Street. They allow you to treat privately. Most of the participants, at least when I was there, were either at Bark or at BSO.
Yeah. Is stepping stones for women still going or not?
So House of Hope, the men's version of Stepping Stones,
Yes.
is still open and very viable, and I am frequently filling up their beds. Unfortunately, the women's version of House of Hope Stepping Stones, I don't think they're presently open.
Yeah, I think that they closed. I wasn't sure though.
Yeah.
So you before the show we were teasing a little bit and saying that yeah, you should have been a social worker. Like that, but it's thank God you're where you are, I think that you can definitely touch more lives in the way you're doing it now. But that you have to have, and I also said this, I said this a little bit on the air, but off camera, I said that I could just feel your empathy and compassion and care, true, real, not phony, just absolute earnest care that you had for every single client that came up against you, and the way in which you opened your arms so graciously to my students, so that's the kind of person that you are, which is a wonderful, beautiful thing. What attracted you to this, to where you are now? What attracted you?
Thank you for the really nice compliment. I mean, I grew up in a very loving home. My mom is a sweetheart. My dad is the son of Holocaust survivors, and his mom suffered for many, many, many years, struggled with depression and was in and out of hospitals, um, mental hospitals. My grandmother. So I've always had a warm place in my heart for people that struggle with mental illness, probably because of my grandmother.
And when we talk about the disease of addiction, it's really it's a mental health issue. Um, I said this last week when I had Melinda on, that there was a time for about 8 years where I would I would do some work in SAP, in the substance abuse program at Paul Ryan, every week, and see the girls and do different things with them um, around addiction. And I would just see the same faces, and they were getting older, and they were getting worn and worn and worn. children been taken away from them. Forget about loss of family. Like, the consequences were horrendous. Physical consequences to their health. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. The disease of addiction is so strong. Do you have any insight on this? And like, how do we help those who maybe aren't even ready for help?
I mean, as I was leaving drug court, we were starting to use medication-assisted treatment a little bit more. Um, and some of the agencies that the drug court was working with um, was allowing people to participate in medication-assisted treatment, where they were using Suboxone, so people would be under a doctor's care and receiving Suboxone, and then if they were to use, would get violently sick,
Mm,
um, just as a way to um, keep them from using. But the other the other suggestion that immediately comes to mind is um, that peer support program I told you about. We have
yes.
we have peers that are actually working at some of the emergency rooms, like Memorial Health and Broward General, where they go into the emergency rooms when someone has had a recent overdose and they meet them at the ER and have a conversation with them there and stick with them going forward. So they catch them at their very lowest point, and they
Right.
try to make sure that that overdose was the last one that they're going to have,
Yeah.
and help them so that they don't have another.
Right. And so this is like, I think that the new idea or the trend is the medical assisted medication assisted treatment. And I mean, that's not so far from what methadone was back in the day, back in New York. A lot of methadone clinics, but it's about harm reduction, I think, is what it is. And, today you shoot up with heroin, you don't know if, fentanyl is in there. And there's so many things now that are just so different than it was before, so much harder. But I know that, in 12-step program, that they talk about this thing, the gift of desperation. So it's like, how desperate do you have to get before you say, I need to make a change? And you see this, and I'm sure you see this also in the mental health court as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're almost to the time where we were started asking questions, but one thing that we didn't say in the very beginning, and that was, can you tell us a little bit about what attracted you to the law? What attracted you to Nova? We have to plug shamelessly plug this. Um, but what attracted you to go into the law?
I had an inspiring government teacher in high school. When my folks divorced, I moved from Coral Springs to suburban Detroit. I went to high school in Farmington Hills, and I had a government teacher named Mr. Brinker, and he had us either write a paper or work on a campaign. So I worked on a campaign for a young man that was running for state representative in, I'm not kidding you, the town of Beverly Hills, Michigan. There's a Beverly Hills, Michigan, which is much less nice than Beverly Hills, California. And it's near where my mom lives in Farmington Hills. And he inspired me because he was really energetic and super nice. He's presently the elected sheriff of Oakland County, Michigan, where my mom lives. His name is Mike Bouchard, and he was the first candidate I ever worked for. He lost that race for state rep, uh, despite all of our efforts. But we knocked on doors. We met people where they were. We heard their concerns, what they wanted for better neighborhoods and safer neighborhoods and lower taxes. And I just thought, this is really cool. I want to do this when I grow up. And I went to college and I got involved in student government, and I worked on Capitol Hill for Senator Graham, and I came home and I wanted to run for the legislature, and I wanted to fix people's problems, and and we had term limits, and I was like, I don't want to keep running and going to Tallahassee. I want to keep serving in the public space, but I don't want to be bickering and dealing in this partisan world. I want to serve somewhere where I can
Mm.
serve and not have to focus on partisan politics. So I found this perfect space where I can just help people and not have to worry about the partisan nonsense.
Yes.
And I'm so delighted with this niche that I found where I can just help people every day meet their basic needs and work with this vulnerable population that really needs the help,
Yes.
and could not be happier.
Wow. Wow. I'm grateful that we got to meet. And I'm grateful that you said yes to come on the show tonight. And I think that Justin and Layla will probably follow up. If not them, maybe other students of mine will follow up and take you up on your offer to kind of
Cool.
shadow you and see, the ins and outs, more than just like an hour kind
For
of
any
thing.
of your students listening, my number at work is 954-831 6905. You can reach me at Ari_Abraham_Porth on Instagram. I love having students sit with me in court. I seriously love it. I have like 5 chairs on the bench. Come sit in one of them. I really like getting students' perspective, and I think it's a cool thing for you guys too.
Excellent.
So come fill my
Awesome.
chairs. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So speaking of students, I'm going to bring them on.
Cool.
This is Justin Campbell and Layla
Yeah.
Horton. Justin is a
Okay.
senior. He's going to be graduating in May. Um, and Layla Horton is my one of my right hands. We have Justin and Layla both my left and my right hand, and they do a lot of work with me. I drive them crazy. They still like me after all of these all after all this time. They still like me. That's wonderful. So, Justin, did you want to take the Q&A that are here at the webinar, and then maybe Layla, you can take the YouTube chat or whatever you guys have already figured out. I'm okay with it.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. We could do that. So I'll start with the Q&A from the Zoom. The
Okay.
first question was, why isn't mental health court offered to our clients in dependency court? Is it because mental health court only deals with criminal charges?
So Judge Hope Bristol has a early childhood court that they treat as a mental health type court. She offers a lot of services similar to those in mental health court. It's just not called mental health court, but she tries to offer a lot of the same things that I do in our court, meeting the needs of very young families. Early childhood court is what she calls it, and that's one of the dependency courts. There are a few of these treatment courts. So we've got, and Dr. T and I were talking about this earlier. There's drug court and there's mental health court. There's also a veterans court that has a lot of the same aspects that we have in mental health court, but it serves veterans, and they actually have people from the VA in the courtroom. Judge Merrigan, who's also an Army general, is the judge for that docket. I think that's a Monday afternoon docket that he has. But we've got a lot of unique courtrooms in Broward that try to help everybody's needs, similar to mine.
That's good.
Excellent. So there's, it looks like Ted wants to say something. I'm just going to give him mic privileges, okay?
Sure.
Go ahead, Ted.
Hey Ari, how are you? I've
Hi,
known
Ted.
Ari
How
for
are
many
you
years.
doing?
Wonderful. I actually have the family in the car with me. We're driving to Colorado right now. Um, Everything that Dr. T introduced you about, I will second that personally. I've known him before he even made the legislature. I remember him on the campaign tour. But back to the questioning. Um, Dr. T kept mentioning about Baker acting versus criminal charges. I think I wanted to address that more than anything else. Was a lot of it, I think, is more along we will address the mental health before we address the crime, and we don't leave any stone unturned in the field. They will still face the charges if need be, but a lot of times a Baker Act happens not in of an arrest, the arrest will still happen. But if we get to a scene and someone's suffering a crisis and they're an immediate threat to themselves and there are no charges or others and there are no charges, then we will Baker Act them and take them to the closest receiving facility. And that's per policy. I think most agencies have that same policy. And then that's they're just not left there to suffer on their own. They will get the help that they need and I think there's no charges pending. And if there are charges, we leave the paperwork behind at the hospital, and they'll go to the jail and get processed and go to court at a later date.
That's great, Ted. Did you have a question? Do you
Thank
have a
you. Have a good
question?
day.
No? Okay, no question. He just wanted
Safe,
to,
safe travels, Ted. Regards to
yeah,
Alex.
okay. So, let's go to the YouTube chat.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions in the YouTube chat.
We have a lot.
Okay.
I think one that's interesting is from Cara or Kara. I'm not sure how to say it. It says, what happens if a client reoffends when they are participating in a diversion or treatment community program?
So this diversion program started about 18 months ago, and we've been keeping stats of the we have presently we've got 120 participants and 70 clients have had their cases dismissed. Of the 70 clients that have had their cases dismissed, 3 have reoffended. Those 3 that have reoffended that had their cases dismissed, they have not. If Carr is asking, have they been let back in? They've been charged with new offenses. They have not been let back in. The diversion program you can do once, but those are pretty good stats for 70 cases to have been dismissed and only 3 of them to reoffend. I'm proud of those numbers.
No, definitely. Those are great numbers. Another question in the chat is by Ashley. She asks, how do you balance due process rights of those who do not want to be on medication with the potential public safety problems of medication noncompliance?
So I have conversations with people and strongly encourage them to take their medication, but I don't force them to take their medication. That is really, I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be one.
Right.
I ask them to, if they're having issues and they're having side effects, and I just ask them to at least have the conversation with the psychiatrist or the nurse practitioner. And maybe there's an alternative medication that they could try that won't have that same side effect. And if they're just not open to medication at all, maybe there's some sort of talk therapy that they could participate in, but I don't force them to take their medication. Now, if they are committed to the state forensic hospital, which sometimes happens in our cases, they will be forcibly medicated there.
Okay.
We have a couple more, right?
Sure.
Do.
We did do Karen.
We can do There's another one by Kara. Let me 1 second. There's just so many. Okay, I do that. Kara asked another really good question. So, she said lots of people could qualify for a variety of mental health diagnosis. What differentiates those that enter your courts from those who don't?
We have psychologists evaluate everybody that comes into our court. And they come into our court if they have mental health diagnosis that is in the DSM, the most updated DSM. If they have a mental health diagnosis or an intellectual disability, or if they have a neurocognitive disease. That was my dog Hamilton. Did you see him? So they could have an intellectual disability, a neurocognitive issue, or a mental illness, and they are welcome into our court.
Perfect. I think we have one last question in here. It just says, how effective is mental health courts? Do you think they're effective?
The first mental health court was actually in Broward County, the misdemeanor mental health court from Judge Lerner Wren. And I think just by their growth, there's like 300 of them nationally, I believe.
Wow.
Now, they're all over this country. And the numbers show their effectiveness. I can tell you that the clients that we serve, we're doing right by.
Awesome.
I just gave I didn't mean to interrupt you, Layla. I'm giving Gord talking privileges, so I just enabled his talking. Go ahead, Gord. You can ask your question live.
Okay, I'm just wondering if there's a cost associated with professional treatment and it's ordered by the court, who covers that cost for those professionals?
So if somebody has a criminal charge and they're a client of our court, we're all paying for those services. It's out of the budget of the Broward Behavioral Health Coalition. It comes from DCF funding.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Great. So we might have time for one quick one. If you see one question that's there that you're like, oh my God, we have to spotlight
You want to
this.
see Hamilton? Say hi, Hamilton.
Yes, we want to see Hamilton. Oh
Say
my
hi.
God. Is his first name Alexander?
Just Hamilton, although Alexander was the inspiration because my son liked the musical.
I bet. Oh, that's great. So maybe one more question and then we wrap it up.
Okay. One question by Chris is, what do you do with intellectually disabled clients?
Good question.
So the folks that are intellectually disabled or on the autism spectrum, they are served by the state's agency for persons with disabilities. And depending upon their level of need, they might have something called the Medicaid waiver, which would qualify them for residential services. Sometimes they would receive a helper called a support coordinator. They might have access to additional benefits depending upon their level of need. They also, we didn't really talk about this, but their cases aren't with us for as long as people that are mentally ill. Their cases are eligible for dismissal after 2 years instead of 3 or 5 years.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Layla and Justin, was there anything that you wanted to ask the judge?
No, honestly, I was really, really just impressed by the presentation. I could just tell as far as how passionate you are. And I think that's one thing that just motivates me, just seeing how passionate you are about the work that you do. It's just like radiant. I can just feel it across the screen. So I love it.
Come join
Yeah.
me, Leila. Come join me.
I was talking about it.
All right.
I'm telling Justin, I want to do it.
Yes. Good. Good. We will.
Cool.
We will. Definitely. Justin, last word? Anything? Did you want to say anything?
It was really like the same as Layla. I really enjoyed the presentation and like actually getting to know about like the things that you were talking about because I learned about mental health courts a little bit, like the DSM and how it works. So I think it's pretty interesting to like actually hear it from a judge. So I found that pretty interesting.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you guys for being with us tonight. And thank you, Judge Porth, for being with us. Do you have any last words? Any gonna give you the last word on this?
You're delightful, Doc. This has really been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for being here, and I would love for us to collaborate again in the future. I'm just curious because you have the same philosophy as one of my like mentors, role models, Father Gregory Boyle. Have you heard of him?
I haven't.
Yeah, look him up.
Okay, Gregory
He does
Boyle.
a TED talk. It's like 20 minutes.
Okay.
He's a Jesuit priest who is the executive director and founder of one of the largest gang intervention rehabilitation programs in the country, if not the world. And it's called Homeboy Industries. And he's out of LA, but his work and his philosophy is incredible. And he deals with the mental health piece and the addiction piece as well, working with gangs. And I think you'd love to hear his talk.
I'm going to
So
listen
that's,
to it. Gregory
yeah,
Boyle. All right.
Gregory Boyle. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Hamilton. And we will definitely be collaborating in the future. And thank you again for being with us tonight.
Thanks for
I
having
so much
me.
appreciate everything that you do.
My
So
pleasure. My pleasure.
yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us. Just a little plug on what's up next. So we closed out the March with Judge Porth, and then we have on April 4th a day in the life of a state attorney, Howard Pryor, and we're going to hear from him. And then after that we have April 18th. So we have three in April, three shows in April. April 18th, we're going to bring back Chief James Poland from the Davie Police Department, and he's going to talk about recruitment and retention strategies in policing and why recruiting and retaining police officers is such a challenge today. And then finally, to close out our season and our semester, April 25th, we have Dennis Hippert, who is one of my students, my PhD students, and he comes from the Southern Police Institute, and he's going to talk to us about police leadership and executive decision making. And so, thank you again to my left and right hand, Layla Horton and Justin Campbell. Thank you to our dean, Dean Durham, Dr. Castro, and Dr. Kushner for supporting all of the work that we do here. Jessica Rodriguez behind the scenes, Johari Kohanti behind the scenes, all of these people that help us and support us in getting the word out about these really interesting criminal justice and social topics, really. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Don't forget, if you're my student and you were here tonight, to please, please, please email me immediately.